Prosecutors say over $1 billion in taxpayer funds was stolen. Money meant to feed children, house the homeless, and treat those with autism. Those convicted so far are mostly members of Minnesota's Somali community, accused of billing the state for services that never existed. President Trump slamming Governor Walz for allowing this rampant fraud to happen on his watch.
A massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services has been allegedly siphoned indirectly into the pockets of the Somali terrorist group al-Shabaab. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most unfortunate among us, including the latest federally funded autism services. The autism fraud scheme reportedly amassed $14 million through Medicare claims for services that were never provided, involving kids who never had autism. And the Somali immigrants behind this web of schemes have allegedly stolen billions from taxpayers, much of the money going back to the Somali government, where it would then end up in the hands of terrorists.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz hand over documents as we learn new details about the investigation into the $1 billion welfare fraud scandal. And new reports claiming Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has deep ties to people who personally profited from the alleged fraud. That list includes one of her former campaign officials and a co-owner of the restaurant where Omar held her 2018 congressional victory party.
A massive fraud scandal unfolding in Minnesota, turning into a wake-up call on America's broken welfare system. As more details come to light about scams that bilk taxpayers out of what could be more than $1 billion.
Hey guys, my name is Modi and you are welcome to Modi Speaks. Guys, I think it would be very shameful and disappointing if this Minnesota Somalian fraud that siphoned over $8 billion from taxpayers is allowed to die down without major repercussions. The fact that this fraud happened right under Tim Walz's nose, the fact that Ilhan Omar was repeatedly linked to some of the culprits who have been charged, the fact that she was associated with many of them, was seen in multiple photos with many of the key players, is something that points to her key involvement in this scam. Ilhan Omar and Tim Walz must be investigated for this massive fraud. But let us begin with Ilhan Omar. We're going to be going through some parts of the interview she recently had with CBS Face the Nation. Despite the fact that CBS is an extremely liberal woke news outlet, Ilhan Omar still appeared to be extremely rattled and nervous throughout the interview. Even the questions she was asked were pretty basic and simple. It was all by accounts, a softball interview, yet she appeared to be as guilty as hell. And when you consider her shaky voice and, her body language, you're going to understand what I'm trying to say. But let us quickly take a look at this particular interview. Here we go.
And we're joined now by Minnesota Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Margaret.
We have a lot to get to with you, but I want to pick up on where the Treasury Secretary just left off. He alleged that people who were tied to you or your campaign were involved in this broad, brazen scheme to rip off the Minnesota state welfare system. Do you want to respond to that? Do you know what he is referring to?
I really don't, and I don't think the secretary himself understands what he's referring to. We obviously had people who were able to donate to our campaign that were involved. We sent that money back a couple years ago. And actually, I was one of the first members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag asking them to look into what I thought was a reprehensible fraud that was occurring within the program.
So right off the bat, the lie begins. Oh, I don't know what he's talking about, but I returned the money to those fraudsters who I was associated with after they donated to our campaign. In fact, I was one of the members of Congress to send a letter to the Secretary of Ag asking them to look into the fraud. But remember, I don't know what the Treasury Secretary is talking about. What a poor liar. What a poor liar. She said she doesn't know what he's talking about, and then she goes on to give an explanation when she has already started off with lies. I mean, that says a lot.
So this was, just for our audience, the Biden-era Justice Department called it the largest COVID fraud scheme in the country. And this was pocketing COVID-era welfare funds, more than $1 billion in taxpayer money that was stolen. It was pretty shocking. Of the 87 people charged, all but 8 are of Somali descent. And that has added to the spotlight being put specifically on your community. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread?
Again, listen to the question. Why do you think this fraud was allowed to get so widespread? Very simple question requiring a very simple answer. But pay attention to see what she answers. A bunch of word salad that has nothing to do with the question.
Well, I want to say, this also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
Mm-hmm. So even though Somalis stole from the Minnesota welfare system, from the American people, 79 Somalis plus 8 other non-Somalis carried out this massive fraud, running into billions. But hey, Somalis are also taxpayers, even though they are the ones who committed this fraud. Even though they are the ones who scammed the US taxpayers. Somalis, with the help of other Somalis in Minnesota, scammed the Minnesota welfare system. So don't ask me how this fraud went so widespread, okay? Remember, we Somali, we also pay tax. I know I was in close contact with some of the culprits. Just remember that we Somalis are also taxpayers. She never answered the question, but she found a way to make her community the victim, even though members of her community are the culprits, the fraudsters in this mess.
It's going to have impact for your community because we've already heard that the head of Medicare and Medicaid say they're going to have a new policy that applies to Minnesota. You heard the Treasury Secretary say they're investigating. But there's another thread here because House Republicans and the Treasury Secretary just now talked about a link to terrorism. Mm-hmm. A possible link. He said they're just now beginning to look into it. How confident are you that that's a false claim?
I'm pretty confident at the moment because there are people who have been prosecuted and who have been sentenced. If there was a linkage in that the money that they had stolen going to terrorism, then that is a failure of the FBI and our court system in not figuring that out and basically charging them with these charges.
What was that, a stutter? Oh, she's no longer all brash bravado anymore. Well, I'm confident at the moment. Maybe when the investigation yields concrete evidence proving that Somalis are truly remitting money home to fund Al-Shabaab or their terrorist group, then I won't be so confident anymore. But at the moment, okay, since these guys have not discovered what is actually happening at the moment, since our secret is safe, I'm pretty confident at the moment. Yeah, that is pretty what she's saying. And also, if they finally find something showing that indeed, these Somalis, indeed, we, my community, we are remitting money home to fund our Al-Shabaab, then it is still not Somali people's fault. It is then the FBI's fault. You can never blame us Somalis.
And Mr. Director, another big issue that is concerning Americans, and it involves the refugee community, but in Minnesota, is the Treasury Department's investigation of that massive fraud there in the Somali community. So how is the FBI working that? And what can you tell us tonight, given the plethora of reporting and the defensive posture of both the mayor and the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz?
What I can tell you is the FBI let out on an investigation, and we publicized it months ago. We've got 78 people that have been arrested pursuant to our investigation along with the interagency, and that investigation is very much ongoing. We are not finished. It was one of the largest fraud scams ever committed in the state of Minnesota history, and we are going to continue to interview and subpoena anyone involved with this case. It is very much ongoing and live.
Guys, I can't wait for the findings of this investigation. Honestly, I cannot. I am just tired of the talk and speaking and making noise. I am tired. I want to see some action. I want to see some indictment and some accountability from these guys. I know that 79 people have been apprehended, but these 79 Somalis are not the key players. They are not the head. They have, bosses telling them what to do. I want these bosses arrested. I just can't wait for these Somali criminals who have been convicted to sing. I want them to sing. And oh, they're going to sing like birds, okay? We need names. We need all the information so that these fraudsters and their bosses will be thrown behind bars where they belong. And guys, I'm sure that Ilhan Omar is quaking in her boots right now. Oh, she is. She is. From the little I can confirm from this interview, she is as nervous as you can ever be. And her response to the questions asked are not making sense. Simple questions. CBS, a very woke TV network, asked her simple questions and she couldn't give any reasonable answer at all. But let us keep our fingers crossed and wait for further information. Mind you, there has been multiple links between Ilhan Omar and some of the culprits, some of the key players in this fraud. I think it is high time lawbreakers start getting punished according to the law. People are tired of just talk and no actions, and I'm definitely keeping a close eye on this case. I pray that justice prevails. As always, guys, these are my thoughts and my opinions. Please feel free to share yours in the comment section below, but do so respectfully. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel, honestly, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share this video to keep people informed, and consider joining my membership or supporting the channel in any way that you can. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. For now,